Hello and thanks for tuning in. I'm Holly Shields for Kalkine TV. Welcome you all to another edition of Executive Corner Expert Talks. Now, many know that cybercrime is a major fear for businesses, but with the right help, you can successfully avoid these issues altogether. To talk us through optimizing cybersecurity, today we have with us James Rees, the founder of Razorthorn, a leading UK company that delivers expert security consulting and testing services to some of the largest and most influential organizations in the world. So welcome to the show, James. It's great to have you on.
Thank you ever so much, Holly. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thanks for joining us. So first of all, you've been working in information security for over 20 years now, I understand. In your opinion, what's required to create a solid security infrastructure for business protection?
Well, that's a good question. To be totally honest, the first thing you need to know is you need to know exactly what the environment consists of. Far too many organizations are not fully aware really of what they have or where it is. So first thing you need to do, look through your infrastructure, figure out what is what and where it is, where it consists of, what is third party, what is supported by yourselves. Once you know that environment, then you can start designing your defense in depth. And defense in depth is really kind of like the key aspect of any kind of security program or strategy, really.
And what does that entail, I suppose, on your end in terms of software, in terms of organization?
It's a collection of everything, really. I mean, you've got the technological aspect. So when we talk about defense in depth with technology, it's having good quality firewalls, it's having good quality intrusion detection, endpoint security, which traditionally used to be called antivirus, but now a lot of antivirus products have been bundled up with a lot of other types of technology that can help protect those endpoints. VPN technology, in order to encrypt communication from, remote workers, which we're all well used to at the moment from the last couple of years, as well as communication between sites or between solutions. So, from a technological sense, that's really what we're talking about with defense in depth. But there are other elements to it as well. So making sure that the users are aware of the security threats to the business. Every business is unique. There are some threats that are common to all. We've all seen what's happened with ransomware, for instance, good example. But being able to spot, a phishing email, being able to spot dodgy attachments, knowing, not to click on links in strange emails, to random parts of the internet. Awareness is kind of really where it's at, right at the top of that defense in depth stack. And then right at the bottom of defense in depth, you have the policies, you have the procedures, you have all the kind of governance aspects and the checks and the tests. Security is kind of this circular kind of strategy, really. You secure it, you test it, you review it. As time goes on and the threats change, you secure it again. It's something you constantly and consistently do on a year in, year out basis.
So would you say that perhaps your clients' needs are constantly evolving because those, obviously those attacks and everything else is evolving with it?
Absolutely. I mean, technology moves at a really rapid race, or a rapid pace rather, sorry. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I kind of got into IT, mobile phones, a good example, were nowhere near as sophisticated as they are now. We never dreamed it would be. Yet nowadays, the technology has advanced where we've got multiple applications, we've got the ability to make payments, as technology changes, the security threats change, usually around about the same kind of pace, maybe slightly slower because it takes a little while for people to detect vulnerabilities for malicious actors to be able to utilize in their attacks. But as a general rule, the faster technology advances, the faster security needs to catch up. Because unfortunately, we historically haven't really done, security by design in what we do. So, an operating system will be built. Then there'll be vulnerabilities found in that operating system that could have been prevented when it was being developed if they'd undertaken good DevSecOps or development security using one of the various different frameworks. But a lot of the technology we're using now, things like Windows operating systems, that kind of thing, they were all developed many, many years ago, and the current versions that we have are just built upon that original premise. Okay, there's variations and things get rebuilt, but technology never stops, and neither does security. And the thing is, the harder times get for people. Obviously we've seen a lot of lockdowns around the world in the last 2 years, and all it's done is drive up cybercrime and driven up the amount of people actually undertaking it. We're in for a real security revolution at the moment because, again, everybody has changed the way they work. We're all remote predominantly. More people are going remote. So, malicious actors, as we call them, because we don't like to call them hackers, are going to take advantage of that,
Right, I can imagine it's a real threat coming around the corner. So would you say that Razorthorn has been able to get ahead of the curve there with that evolution in security?
We try to. Sometimes we're blindsided, just like everybody else is. You can't always quite predict what's coming around the corner. We've got a lot of good, what we call penetration testers, who spend a lot of time honing their skills and learning new ways to try and circumvent controls to for customers to test their security. So, and we also keep up to date on what's going on. But it's a tough gig really to stay right on the top of it, because by the time you've seen a vulnerability, normally it's being compromised, or it's malicious actors are very quick to jump on any opportunity that they have, and it's like with the ransomware. 1 minute nobody was really doing it, and the next minute every attack you heard of was another company being compromised and then having to pay their ransoms. So a lot of security is about preventative, and that's what we do here. We try to design preventative measures to capture all but maybe some of the more really sophisticated types of threat actors. As I said, security can never be 100%, unfortunately. It's not a perfect world. But we can definitely capture like 98% of the threats, and the last remaining ones, you just have a good plan to recover. That's part of your defense in depth. It's not just about planning to prevent an attack. It's also planning to recover from it quickly, cleanly, and efficiently.
Right, that does make perfect sense there. And I can imagine that digital assets and cryptocurrency is something that you're dealing with as well, and it has different ramifications for you. And at the moment we are seeing a lot of regulations around crypto changing across the globe. Does that affect your work at all?
It does. I mean, cryptocurrencies specifically, it's the next stage in payments. Let's face it. I'm a big believer in cryptocurrencies. If it was going to collapse, it would have collapsed a long time ago when Bitcoin first came out. It hasn't done that, and indeed we're seeing trillions in the market cap when it comes to just Bitcoin alone, let alone Ethereum or any of the others. And the technologies that are being built out of like the blockchain, which is what cryptocurrencies are predominantly based on. It is that next stage. We try to keep up with everything. We've got digital assets are now becoming far more valuable in many respects than physical assets. Okay, if you've got a Picasso sitting on your wall, you've got a significant asset there, but let's face it, very few of us do. But if you've got a specific idea that you've put down into digital format for a new piece of software, a new system, a new service, that can be every bit as valuable as that expensive painting that you have on the wall. But potentially it's easier to get. Someone's got to break into your house, and of course we're very good when it comes to physical security. With digital security, it's a lot harder to protect digital assets, and cryptocurrency as well. We've seen a lot of exchanges getting hacked, Bitcoin going missing, Bitcoin being taken out of wallets, or the actual systems and services for some companies being compromised themselves. And there was one the other day where fake Ethereum was minted, and then the company had to kind of replace the fake Ethereum that somebody had managed to get hold of and make a ton of money on. That's where it's going. And I think, security is always playing catch up. And the one thing I do wish is that, as fast as we're innovating in that crypto space, we need to be looking very, very carefully at security as well. Fiat currency, the current currencies that we all use now, there's very strict controls in something called PCI DSS if you're a merchant, taking card payments, or a service provider supporting that. We don't have the same kind of legislation when it comes to crypto. So there's no bare minimum standard that companies in that space are required to do. And of course, because most cryptocurrencies are decentralized themselves anyway, there's no single office, there's no single entity that's in control.
Right.
The onus is going to be on companies operating in that space to secure themselves and maybe even come up with their own kind of minimum standard. I don't know how that would work in a decentralized world, but security is something that you can't ignore. We've all seen what happens with digital assets. You get compromised, they go missing, you are either getting ransomed, or that cryptocurrency is gone and it's sitting in somebody else's wallet.
Yeah, right. It's absolutely, definitely. There are, massive scale things that can happen, as we have seen over the past year, especially some large scale crimes involving cryptocurrency. Absolutely. So I can imagine it's difficult to get ahead of that, as it's still evolving.
It's still very early stage for a lot of companies in that space at the moment. Even though it's many years since the first Bitcoin was mined out of the block, we're still kind of innovating in that space, and it's still early days yet. I think there's a lot of work that needs to happen, but it'll be exciting. Alongside Meta and the metaverse and all the other technologies that are coming out. It's going to be the currency of the future, to be totally honest.
Couldn't agree with you more. It's definitely a very exciting space there. Now, we just touched on earlier about working from home, or WTH as the acronym goes. It's definitely something that's leaving perhaps many businesses open to new security threats. So is there any advice you can perhaps give that businesses can look out for when they are operating from home to safeguard their cybersecurity needs?
Oh, there's plenty. At the end of the day, I think touching on that, the whole working from home thing is not going away. We'd kind of been going down that route for a long time, and we always had countermeasures to support the security of workers from home. I myself, have a number of customers where staff before the pandemic would work from home maybe once or twice a week. Usually on a Friday when they didn't want to go into the office. Now it's looking like that's a kind of permanent thing, and you're only going to go into the office now maybe once or twice a month. Companies are dramatically downscaling their offices. When we looked at security and defense in depth and security for an organization before all of that really kicked off, security was very much centralized, especially sort of with cloud-based technology. Now, of course, the perimeter of an organization's network is everybody's front room. It's everybody's kitchen table. You're reliant on the internet connection there to be able to, do your work. But as we all well know, wireless technology, no matter what those telecommunications firms will say in their adverts, is never, ever, ever as secure as a business needs it to be. So what I would advise for any company going down the route of just complete works from home or predominantly working from home, know your assets, understand what your assets are. Once you understand what your assets are and who accesses those assets, and we talk about digital assets there, find ways to prevent circumvention of your now very wide perimeter. Endpoint security has become really, really important now. It gone a bit stale before all of this kicked off. The traditional companies were still there and nobody really took much notice for the endpoints, because more often than not the endpoints were internal. Even laptops being taken out of the office. Most of the time people were working in the office, so everything was concentrated on that perimeter. Now it's all working from home. We need to really refresh that space. We're seeing a massive resurgence of encryption, really important technology that really hasn't been companies haven't really adopted in the main for a long time. Okay, yeah, they've used encryption for things like communications between sites, VPNs, that kind of thing. We're well used to that. But encrypting data, access control is another real key thing. We're definitely in the sort of realms now of multi-factor authentication is king. It's not just enough to have a username and password anymore. You're going to have some kind of token-based or biometric add-on to that to make sure that people getting into the system are who they say they are. And just making absolutely certain that you have good backups, you have no single points of failure. This whole kind of change to working from home has meant we've had to really, as security professionals, completely review our defense in depth. And since there's a million different ways that people are working from home now, there's no one foolproof way of doing that. It's and I urge anybody who's concerned about security, because they're now completely remote, get some security professionals to come in and help you out, sort of design your defenses against digital compromise, digital loss, set the standard, get them to help you build that. Because if you're just reliant on people who aren't security people, as good as a lot of those people are at the various different jobs they're at, it's all in the mindset. So yeah, that's my advice to anybody going down that route. Just make sure that you get good quality security professionals to sit down and help you through that process. But no, understand where your assets are probably the key thing there.
All right, very well said there. I think you're definitely right in that. It's definitely not the time right now to not take security seriously, especially as we're changing our working conditions and structure as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's happening all over the place. It's not just happening over there and in Australia. It's happening here in the UK. It's happening all across Europe and the States. We're all in the same kind of situation where
definitely
it's now become the thing. That's what we all do.
Absolutely. Well, I couldn't agree more there, and very, very well said, I must say. It's been great to hear insights today, James. Thanks very much for joining us on Executive Corner Expert Talks.
Cheers, Holly. It's been an absolute pleasure.
The pleasure is all ours, and thanks for your time as well, viewers. If you've just joined us, that was the founder of Razorthorn, James Rees. As we say here, stay apprised and invest wise with Kalkine.